It is the 10th of the 12th, 2025. The time is 25 minutes past 10, and that means, as always, one thing, that there are a multitude of F1-centric threads at which we need to pull. There's been testing 2026 cars, the biggest rule and reg change to ever happen in 75 years of F1. Of course, it's power units, half electric, half ICE. It's going to get techier than techie things. So too, it's active aero. And the word on the F1 curb is that two of the teams came to the testing at Abu Dhabi more prepared than the rest. We will talk to it. There's a brand new F1 TV, Apple produced F1 TV promo. And there's some additions. Some are speculating that we might get multi-view, not multi-viewer, but multi-view proper. It's going to get techier than techie things. We'll talk to that. So too, we've got to talk about Red Bull, Helmut Marko settings, now no longer there. It's going to get techie. What does it mean for Red Bull? More broadly, what does it mean for Maximilian Verstappen? And what does it mean for Oscar Piastri? F1 rumour and speculation, of course, not breaking news like we did Dr. Helmut Marko 48 hours ago. But listen, it will get techier than techie things. Go on, let me show you about this. In the first instance, you'll be aware that Apple have taken over the rights in the United States of America. They will be, by dint of F1 TV, or Apple's version of F1 TV, be showing all and sundry, all of F1 media races, FP1s, qualifyings, etc. as of 2026, in a deal rumoured to be worth around 180 million US dollars a year. But the F1 community just wants to see a couple of different things. What's the commentary going to be saying? Is it going to be Crofty and Brunder et al., or are they going to get a specialist team? Will it be F1 TV's team, aka Alex Jakes and Jolyon Palmer? That's one question. In the second instance, what's the footage and the broadcast going to look like now? F1 TV, or Apple TV, excuse me, have released a promo. I would play it, but I don't want to get in trouble. The important bit is that it looks like what you see on the right hand side of your screen, that potentially there will be nested viewing on board. We've been crying out for this for a gazillion years. Why can't they get sexy? I mean, if you're leveraging technology, then show us the onboards. We should be able to select in view now. Why should we have to go press the red button on Sky and then only see onboards? I want to see these things nested in the broadcast, and it sounds like Apple TV are going to bring it, as you would expect from Apple, if indeed they're at the forefront of all things technology. It's going to get techie. Oh, and by the way, there's been testing. I've got to show you these pictures. You know that there's been testing already as far as tyres and the 2026 cars. So some of the rookies were in the TPCs doing the 2025 stuff again at the altar of Pirelli in their brand new tyres. But some of the drivers were in dummy mule 2026 iteration cars. Here's where it gets taken again. These images are courtesy of our mates, the boys and girls over at The Race. We are The Race. This is what Mercedes were doing. So remember, it's movable active aero settings for next year, meaning therefore no DRS. That's now in our rear view as far as an F1 community. But what we will see next year is in effect something like the, imagine DRS but not quite DRS but active aero. That's the lens through which you want to view these things. So to replicate for that in this 2025 test of 2026 rules and regs, those cars, they've taken in the first instance piece of the downforce, low downforce rear wings, but then they need to do something with the front wing right, because that's what's in effect replacing the DRS. What you see on the right hand side of your screen is a very agricultural contraption that Mercedes are desperate to back off this front wing to replicate for the 2026 regs, lest we forget, when you take off some aero off of those front wings, therefore there will be an equal and opposite a downside impact as far as your load on your front tyres down the bloody straight in Abu Dhabi. You will need to reflect that. Then only two teams have done this, chat. Only two teams have done this. One is Mercedes, the other is Ferrari. All of the rest of the teams, again, it feels like they're a bit behind the eight ball at this juncture. Ferrari have done this as well, and again, it's a sexier contraption. It looks infinitely better than did Mercedes. So too, it's important. We'll go through those contraptions in more detail, by the way, because it's techier than techie things. wheels though. If you're invested in what these F1 cars, fire-breathing dragons, 1,000 brake horsepower, one and all, if you invested in what they look like, for the longest time, F1 community have been dying to take off the bloody wheel covers. Wheel covers? Are we at Halfords? Is this max power? Like, what are we doing? Fast and Furious. Take the bloody wheel covers off. Now, during the test at Abu Dhabi, Williams showed a car that had no wheel. Can you imagine if the 2026 cars looked like that? Bigger picture. Oh, the humanity. Finally, we get some alloys, some F1 cars that actually look like F1 cars. Inject it into my veins. Oh, and by the way, there's been a lot going on at Red Bull of late. We've got to talk honest and earnest here, because I think this is chaotic, and there will be downstream ramifications as far as a Formula One team. One Formula One team in particular, and I'm talking to, of course, the Bulls that I read. Dr. Helmut Marko confirmed as leaving yesterday. I don't want to do one of these to the official, the accredited F1 journos, an old world F1 media, but I feel like they were a day late and $1 short in their reporting about Helmut Marko, because we went 48 hours ago and then we get the news officially confirmed 24 hours later. But I digress. No more patting myself on the back for being first past the post. Why did it happen though? And what does it mean? Now, rumour, F1 speculation and conjecture states that Helmut Marko left because of a couple different things. In the first instance, there's a power struggle, as is always the case at Red Bull, or at least has been for the past 12 months. In the first instance, it was Christian Horner looking to leverage British financiers with a view to spin off Red Bull Racing Technologies, craft his career in the image of his arch nemesis Toto, the boy who cried wolf. No longer did Christian Horner want to be a team principal come CEO. He wanted to be a shareholder, an owner. He wanted equity, a la Toto, the boy who cried wolf, who yet and still owns 33% of Mercedes F1. Didn't happen for Christian Horner, and some say that ultimately his career fell foul. That was the hurdle at which he had to leave. That the Austrians, Red Bull GmbH, said, you know, we've had enough of you, chap. So too, there was underperformance. So too, of course, there was allegations of misconduct, which didn't help. But ultimately, he wasn't the author of his own destiny, Christian Horner. Dr. Helmut Marko, however, different thing, isn't it? Because he's Max Verstappen's guy. Max Verstappen, if word on the F1 curb is to be believed, had a stipulation in his contract as at 2-4 stating that if Dr. Helmut Marko left, then he could null and void his contract with immediate effect. That's how important Helmut Marko was to Red Bull Racing as a going concern and Max Verstappen's future at that team. That's how important he was. Now, however, Dr. Helmut Marko, less important, disposable. He's not part of the journey, the line of travel that Red Bull GmbH are going in, and they disposed of him. There's a couple of different reasons. Again, if word on the F1 curb is something in which you want to be invested, there's a couple of different reasons that people are citing. A, relic. So Kimi Antonelli, you heard him say, he just moved out the way of Kimi Antonelli, just dropped off the track almost deliberately, inciting hatred. Now, in 2021, maybe you can get away with that, but we're in a new world here. This is the drive to survive generation. F1 is trying to be at the forefront, the bastion of all things good and sustainable. This is corporate social responsibility now, isn't it? And a relic like Dr. Helmut Marko talking like that, inciting hatred and AB at the hands of one Kimi Antonelli. That's not good enough. It's not a good look for F1, nor is it a good look for Red Bull GmbH, who in essence are a marketing company. That's your first one. Your exhibit B is this. Dr. Helmut Marko, if rumour is to be believed, went out and signed Alex Dunn, didn't he? Severed the contract that Alex Dunn had as a McLaren junior peddler. Now, surely you've got to tick some boxes, right? If you're signing some drivers, surely you want to get the rubber stamp of Red Bull GmbH, all and sundry, the C-suite exec level bods, particularly if you're making these exec level decisions. Of course, Dr. Helmut Marko didn't do it. So Red Bull have had to go out and sever Alex Dunn's contract. That's chaos, chat. Dr. Helmut Marko operating in a vacuum. What are we doing here? And again, that's costly, right? If you've got to sever contracts, if you've signed somebody when you shouldn't have signed them, when you don't have the legal bandwidth nor precedent, then that's going to get you involved in some financial problems. Rumours, word on the F1 curb, is that in order to sever that Alex Dunn contract, they had to pay in the region of hundreds of thousands of pounds. That's not acceptable. So in summary then, a couple different reasons why they had to let go of Dr. Helmut Marko. In the first instance, culturally, is he a fit, not just for what Red Bull GmbH are trying to be, but what they are now in the post-Christian Horner era? Probably not. And best exemplified by the comments around Kimi Antonelli inciting hatred and AB. Not fit for purpose. Nobody wants that. And again, Dr. Helmut Marko might have been able to get away with that under the Christian Horner era Red Bull 2021 settings, but it is no longer 21. It is 25, soon to be 26. So therefore, is Dr. Helmut Marko, as he is 81, 82 years old, fit for purpose for Red Bull going forward under Laurin Mekis? Probably not. And then you get the Antonelli thing, and then you get the Alex Dunn thing. 3 strikes, and sadly for Dr. Helmut Marko, he is out. What does this mean though, chat, going forward? Well, it means that this is a brand new era for Red Bull, right? Everyone, barring Max Verstappen on the right-hand side of your screen, is no longer at the Bulls that are red. Christian Horner in the first instance, gone. Adrian Newey, gone. Jonathan Wheatley, gone. Rob Marshall, gone. What are we doing here? This is chaos. And now you get Dr. Helmut Marko. The team doesn't even resemble the team under Christian Horner. And then you come to find out, per Joe Saywood, that the last relic, the last semblance of Christian Horner's legacy was that in some of their contracts, the Christian Horner loyalists had stipulations that they could leave if Christian Horner joined an Alpine, let's say, that null and void, just like the Helmut Marko clause, that if Christian Horner left the team, that they could too and go and join him in his next venture. That is also gone, per Joe Saywood. He says that all of those stipulations have been nulled and voided. That in their stead, financial incentives. There are no more relics of Christian Horner. He's gone for real, for real. And I say all that, chat, to say this. What happens next for Max Verstappen? Because again, Gianpiero Lambiase, it sounds like he'll be there as race engineer next year, but not necessarily. The transition between now and then isn't smooth. That potentially there was at one point talk about him going on to different things or moving to a different role. So then what does Max Verstappen do, chat? That's the point. Well, here's my guess. Here's my guess and my prediction. If Red Bull build themselves a god tier car in 2026, Max Verstappen won't want to go anywhere. But having lost the championship by 2 points in 2.5, you think he's got time to waste? You think he'll hang around if they don't build themselves a god tier car, a car capable of winning races and therefore championships? Absolutely not. Max Verstappen will be having conversations. I think it's simulated. I think you might be right. If they don't build him a car capable, then he will leave without compunction. When asked, you'll recall in the press conference, how about Barcelona, mate? You gave up 9 points then and you only lost the championship by 2. Max Verstappen said, is that the only thing that we're going to talk about? Is that the only... You can't extend me any grace for not having a bloody car as near as makes no difference. Like 3, the second, third of the championship. Like, what about that? Red Bull did it. It was a dog. It was understeer. It was snap oversteer. The optimal operating window was so narrow that you roll the dice and you might get a 6 on any given race weekend. That's where they were. So what happens with Max Verstappen, chat? I'm asking you the question. Of course, he can't leave with immediate effect. He'll be there in 2026. But we know already that there's a performance clause stating that if he's not within the top 2 next year, top 3 was 2025, but in 2026 it will be the top 2 as at the summer break. The Max Verstappen can null and void his contract. Now, look, if I were a betting man, McLaren aren't going anywhere. They will have themselves the god tier Mercedes power unit, and they haven't brought any upgrades since as near as makes no difference halfway through 2025. So what makes you think that they're going to drop off a ledge? Oscar Piastri will be right there. So too will the incumbent reigning world champion. Of the drivers' variety, Lando Norris. So if Max Verstappen is outside the top 2, what makes you think that he won't go to another team? The market leading team in 2026. Of course he will. So then who goes to Red Bull then? Well, Christian Horner, no longer team principal at Red Bull Racing. He was always a big fan of Oscar Piastri, weren't he? He was always a big fan. You'll recall on Netflix's Drive to Survive, he was asked if he could have one of the 2 McLaren drivers, in Piastri or Lando, which one would he have? His response was short and instant, decisive, pointed. His response was Oscar. Now, look, this is techie. Your boy tweeted this about a month ago now, 6th of November. I said, and again, this is me talking to various different sources, trying to understand the lay of the land. Then the chat was about Oscar Piastri going to Ferrari. ? Starlord, I'm telling you, we'll get to it, mate. Then the conversation was about Ferrari, that Ferrari was sniffing around a potential Oscar Piastri contract on the back of him not being too happy with this perceived or otherwise favouritism. We can go on about British Grand Prix. We can talk about Australia, call it off Oscar, papaya rules. We can talk about the inversion at the Italian Grand Prix. But what there can be no doubt about is that Oscar will not be too happy. How can you be content? You've just lost the championship, and potentially there could have been it's not foul play, is it? It's not actus reus. We can't say it's that. Zach Brown didn't put his thumb on the competitive weighing scale. I don't think they did. But did they want Lando Norris to win? That's a different question. And that's what Oscar Jack Piastri will be wrestling with in real time. A month ago, we tweeted out, Paddock insiders say that Oscar Piastri is expected to have conversations with Red Bull about signing for 2026. Now, they'll say that this just happens all the bloody time. Of course, Mark Webber will be having these conversations in real time. That's his job as Oscar Piastri's manager. They told me I was an idiot, that this is just speculation. What do you want about, Cameron? But sometimes all F1 journos are created equally, but some are created more equal than others. Rebecca Clancy hangs around all of the Paddock insiders, BBC 5 Live, all of this other stuff. And she was on a podcast inside the Piranhas Club, and she had this to say. Roll the clip.
I think the harmony within the team will carry on. I think that they're fortunate to have Mercedes engines, because the noise that we're hearing is that they are the best. And I think that design-wise, I think that they're got a good, strong team there. I don't see anyone leaving. And if anything, they're going to be the favourites again. And let's see what happens.
Yeah. What about this relationship though? Because there were a lot of between the drivers, there were a lot of rumours about Piastri, and we know both McLaren drivers are signed on multi-year. They never tell us exactly how long contracts. Piastri's is thought to run to the end of 2028. However, there were a lot of rumours in the paddock over the weekend that Piastri was looking to join Red Bull from 2027.
Yeah,
how would that work?
Maybe. Well, it could definitely work. I mean, who knows what's going to happen next year with regards to Ford's progress, whether Verstappen has enough, whether he wants to go somewhere else. There's lots that can happen next year with the change of regulations, and I think it's very early to be talking about that. I'm sure conversations have happened with regards to the parties, and what if you wouldn't be a Formula One manager doing your business if you weren't checking on people's availability. So it's entirely plausible that could happen, but we won't know until about halfway through, or certainly a quarter of the way through next season, because if Ford do come in with a super engine and Red Bull pull it all together, then Verstappen won't be going anywhere, and people will be looking to join that team. And it's not just Oscar Piastri, it's probably all of them lining up to join. But I don't know if that's going to happen, because Ford still have probably got quite a lot of work to do, I think.
Oh, the humanity. Oscar Piastri potentially at Red Bull as soon as 2027. No, Spicy, you are right. I alluded to 2026 potentially, but the Overton window of F1 news and media is fleeting, ever revolving, or ever evolving, even as far as the F1 beat, Rubik's Cube. Things change by the millisecond in a sports franchise, well, that's ultimately told, whose story is told in milliseconds. It's going to get techie, I'm telling you. TWM. It is going to get techie. This is a conversation that's happening in real time. Now, would it have happened in 2026 if Oscar Piastri were conjecturing and speculating? This is hypothetical, of course. If Oscar Piastri were no longer in the hunt for the Drivers' Championship, ultimately we'll never know. But if Max Verstappen leaves, I think 12 months from now, which he may well do, given that all of Middle England are saying that the God-tieriest power unit in 26 will be the Mercedes. So if Max Verstappen leaves because that Ford powertrain isn't up to scratch, that Red Bull is now a branded new team, bears no resemblance, sans Helmut Marko, sans a Christian Horner, a Jonathan Wheatley, a Rob Marshall, all of the God-tier bods have left. If Maximilian Verstappen leaves, then you tell me who's going to be in that seat alongside Isaac Hadjar in 2027. Prosecution rests. No further questions.